Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be another finance video. My husband Alex did one last week for you guys, and if you haven't seen it, I'll link it up right here for you. But y'all seem to love it. The feedback was so amazing, and everyone said that it was super valuable financial information, a different perspective. And I think it really helped a lot of you guys, at least that we hope that it did. And so it was just really exciting to get all your feedback and all of your comments and all the love and support on that video. So since you guys seem to love it, we've decided to go ahead and do another one. And Alex really wanted to talk about a specific topic, which is equity versus debt. It kind of ties into one of the principles that he talked about in the previous video, which he's going to explain all of this to you guys. But hopefully it will help your earning potential and help y'all potentially make more money. And again, like, if he can help in any way, give you guys tips and advice on, you know, increasing your earnings and getting out of debt, we're really happy to put that information out there. So we're gonna keep doing as many as we can, as long as you guys keep liking them and keep letting us know that they're helping. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and put Alex's little avatar up again, and you guys can put in your AirPods or your headphones and go ahead and listen. I think he talks for about 10-ish minutes or so, and I again really recommend that you guys listen from beginning to end to really fully understand everything that he's saying. He gives lots of examples, which I think are very helpful as well. So hopefully you guys enjoy this finance video, and I will see you guys at the end of it.
Liza told me that the feedback on my prior thing was overwhelmingly positive. So I wanted to thank folks for that. Appreciate that. And I've always kind of had designs on doing financial education at some point. In fact, I even went as far as establishing a 501c3 for exactly that. So, I'm happy to do these things from time to time if folks are benefiting. Anyways, as a follow-up to the last talk, I was thinking it might be helpful to dig in a bit more on the third principle that I had discussed last week or whenever that was. That's the one which says work ethic trumps raw intelligence, and essentially encourages folks to become indispensable at work with the ultimate goal of increasing their earnings. So the reason I'm picking on this one is that I believe it's a bit less tangible and thus a bit more difficult for people to actually take action on. For instance, it's pretty clear how to implement the second one that we talked about. That's the cost-cutting one. Essentially, you just eliminate discretionary spending, right? Pretty simple. Now, for some people, that's more easily said than done, but nevertheless, I imagine that everyone at least understands what needs to be done. Whereas this third one, well, that's a bit trickier. So before I go further down this path, I need to sidebar for a moment to explain some terminology you'll need to know to best understand what I'm saying. Specifically, two financial terms, debt and equity. If you were to take a hyper-simplified view of finance, you might boil all investments down to either debt or equity. Debt investments involve an investor providing money to a recipient, and then that recipient making periodic repayments back to the investor for some period of time, with the repayment amounts, frequency, and duration all being defined at the beginning of the investment. Equity investments, on the other hand, involve an investor providing money to a recipient in control of an asset, and then sharing in that asset's value in perpetuity. So these two types of investments carry substantially different risk profiles. Because the debt investment has a predetermined repayment schedule, the investor knows exactly what their return will be, both amount and timing. The equity investment, on the other hand, has no predetermined repayment and in fact may never be repaid. So the obvious consequence of this is that the potential upside of equity investments must exceed the return provided by the debt investment, or else nobody would make equity investments. The takeaway here is that debt investments carry less risk but have a more clearly defined return, whereas equity investments have more risk, but to compensate, also have the potential for far superior returns. All right, so with that established, let's go back to what we were talking about before. How to become indispensable at work and ultimately grow your income. And frankly, there's really no way to provide a very specific step-by-step customized for everybody guide on this, as the details of what should be done are situation dependent. That said, there is a general approach which I found to be pretty universally applicable, Basically, it boils down to establishing an equity mentality, understanding the relationship between contribution and compensation, and questioning the status quo, identifying opportunities for improvement, and then taking action. So those three things. We just went through the main differences between debt and equity investments. I sometimes find it useful to think about the way people earn their living in the same context. For example, let's think about the following notional person. Let's call him Danny McDetterson. Okay, Danny joined a company 3 years ago at a reasonable starting salary just out of college. Since starting, he's received 3% raises each year, and based on discussions with some of the most tenured employees, Danny anticipates similar raises for the duration of his employment, except for potential promotions from time to time, which may deliver somewhat more of a raise in that particular year. Danny is also eligible for an annual bonus of up to 10% of his annual salary based upon his personal performance as well as the company's overall performance. Danny always does what's asked of him by his manager, but does not view it as his job to try and go above and beyond what's explicitly asked of him. Consequently, he enjoys a favorable work-life balance and rarely has to work, outside of 9 to 5, and never on weekends or holidays. Danny plans to remain with the company until he reaches full retirement age, at which point he'll be eligible for a company pension in addition to federal Social Security. So as you can see, Danny will likely do just fine and live a reasonably comfortable life. It's unlikely, however, that he will find himself in a position to retire early or explore more exciting work opportunities or other things which are more closely aligned with his own personal passions. Essentially, Danny has established himself as a debt investment in his employer's eyes. That is, Danny is willing to give the company a substantial portion of his life in exchange for financial stability. To be clear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this, and many people are perfectly happy like this. So, if that's you, great. That's what you should shoot for. If, however, you are one of those who would like to go beyond financial stability and seek financial freedom, then a debt mentality is most likely not going to cut it. You'll be better served thinking of yourself as an equity investment, and more importantly, getting others to see you this way as well. So then the question is how, right? How can you actually do that? This is where the relationship between contribution and compensation comes into play. Think about how an organization goes about determining what to pay an employee for a particular job role. So in general, it puts together a job description and uses info from compensation data aggregators like Monster, Indeed, Glassdoor, etc., to determine what a competitive wage or salary for that job would be. Essentially, this is a process for what the financial industry calls price discovery, wherein you try to determine the fair market value of an asset. The more common an asset is, the easier and more accurate price discovery process is, as there are many, many data points which generally fall within a relatively narrow range. So if you're doing a job strictly in accordance with a common job description, then it becomes difficult to justify substantial deviations from average compensation for the same job, or else the company would just be better off hiring someone who was willing to work for the market compensation for that. Basically, this just means that the labor market has determined appropriate compensation for a particular contribution. If you want higher compensation, it's not enough to just tell your manager that you want a raise, or even that you need a raise because of something that's happened in your life. Your car broke down, your dog is sick, whatever. Rather, you need to look for ways that you can demonstrate to your employer that you're doing things which go above and beyond those things originally listed in your job description upon which your compensation is based. At that point, you have a valid and objective claim to higher compensation. If your manager is reasonably competent, they will recognize this and will also recognize that if they don't appropriately compensate you, you may just go elsewhere, perhaps to a competitor. Now, I'm sure that some of you out there are in fact already doing things that go above and beyond your job description on which your current salary or wages are based. If you're one of those, you may consider going to ask for a commensurate increase in your compensation. But if you do, just be sure to be well prepared for the discussion. Typically you're going to want to make a list of, here's my basic job description, here's the salary that's associated with that. Oh, and here are the things that I'm doing that are going above and beyond that. And importantly, how these extra things are delivering value to the employer, right? This last piece is really the critical piece. You got to show them exactly what you're doing and how they are benefiting from it. For others who perhaps have not yet found ways to go beyond the basic requirements of their position, taking that first step can be difficult, as sometimes it's hard to see what you can do to start delivering more value to an organization, especially if you aren't in a managerial or executive role where you have kind of a broader purview. So obviously, I can't give you specific guidance as I don't know what your particular situation is. However, I can share with you some general experience from my own life, and hopefully you can draw kind of analogies to your situation. I currently work as a financial consultant. One of the first things I like to do when being brought into a new client is an assessment of their processes. The reason I like to start here is that every company has lots of things that they do on a recurring basis, be it daily, weekly, monthly, whatever. And without fail, many of those processes will be ineffective and or inefficient. If I can identify some of these and offer more effective, efficient alternatives, then I can deliver to the client potentially enormous savings, oftentimes well in excess of the fees that I charge them for my services. For instance, say the accounting group is tasked with providing management a monthly financial reporting package. Let's further say that this process relies on numerous manual activities and data manipulations, and consequently, it takes the 3-person accounting team there a week to complete. And even then, errors still slip through kind of more often than management would like. They're basing their decisions off this data, and if it's got flaws in it, their decisions are going to be flawed. So if I can help redesign this process for them and automate it, perhaps rather than taking 3 people 1 week, it would require only 2 people for 3 days. This works out to, 72 hours of labor saved every month for the rest of time. The company would then be able to redeploy those resources to more productive and valuable uses. And as an added bonus, due to the minimization of manual manipulations, errors are substantially reduced. So to management, this means that they'll be able to make better and faster operational decisions with the more accurate and timely data they're now being provided. This type of thing is extremely common in businesses. And while I'm using, an accounting and finance example to illustrate, that's simply because that's what I'm most familiar with and that's what I come across, in my day-to-day. I know that similar broken processes exist throughout all functional groups within companies. So one thing you might consider is taking a look at what you do on a day-to-day basis, asking yourself, why is this thing done this way, and how it could be improved. Something that always amazes me is how few people ever do this. And when I ask folks why they do things in a particular way, all too often the answer is, well, because that's how we've always done it, or because that's how I was trained to do it, right? And so while those answers are fine for Danny McDetterson, they won't help you capture equity type upside into your personal earnings. So just to review and kind of wrap this up, my approach to executing number 3 from the previously discussed financial principles is essentially to do the following. Think of yourself as equity versus debt. Find ways to deliver value in excess of what's explicitly asked of you, and take action to deliver that value. At that point, you have a legitimate claim to commensurately increased compensation. So that's it for this installment. Hopefully it gives you some ideas on how to increase your earnings potential. Good luck, and feel free to let Liza know any follow-up questions on this.
I hope you guys enjoyed. We'd love to hear your feedback on this. Let me know what you thought about that whole segment and if you think that was helpful at all, and also leave some recommendations as well for future videos that we can do for you guys regarding finances. I know there's a bunch that Alex has in mind that he wants to go over, But we love just to add more and more to the list, because again, if you guys really are enjoying these videos and getting lots of useful information out of them, then we're going to continue to do them for you guys. And I know so many of y'all are still recommending the podcast, and we're still considering it. Honestly, Alex and I both have no idea how to even start a podcast. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I have a few friends who have podcasts, so I'm sure I can just talk to them about it. But anyway, go ahead and leave your comments down below and your suggestions for future finance videos from Alex. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.
Push over